The notion that Israel is defending itself is as absurd as the notion that the rapist is defending itself from the victim. Because Israel is the occupier.
You haven't asked me.
Hold on.
But
Excuse me, let me finish. Just let me finish. An occupier by international law definition means that they are already in an offensive posture. If they're in an offensive posture, if someone brings you to Piers Morgan, grabs you by the thing, throws you into your bathroom, yeah? You're in your bathroom, you're screaming and they're eating food, having a good time. One day you come out of your bathroom, you try and fight one of them, who's defending who from who?
Mohammed,
How can you self-defend when you're occupying?
Rabbi, your thoughts?
Okay, I think I was trying to be very charitable, don't want to straw man Ayman. So there may have been a broader context in which he has a stronger justification. Let's just take the argument, if this is the argument he's making and it's correctly contextualized, that if you're occupying somebody, you cannot ever defend yourself, right? So there's two issues. First of all, Israel isn't occupying Gaza, hasn't been occupying Gaza since it pulled out in 2005, hasn't been a single soldier in there in any offensive posture whatsoever. But let's suppose it was, right? Let's take Britain in Northern Ireland. It's actually British territory, but the IRA people would certainly have felt back in the 70s or 80s, this is occupied territory. So now they go attacking British civilians. Could they use that argument? Britain can't be defending its civilians against people trying to kill the civilians because it's there. I mean, I think police forces tend to be occupying the countries they're in, and they can certainly defend their civilians against people coming to kill them. I don't understand where that argument will begin. Let's take the West Bank, where Israel's much more actively in there. It hasn't given it back because it does feel it would be a threat to its existence without a proper peace deal, something we can discuss another time. Israel's in there all the time. Its troops go into Palestinian towns and arrest or try to close down terror cells before they can attack the civilians. Of course, that's defending itself, right? If America would have, when America was in Afghanistan, right, let's say that was an occupation. If it would have found information on a bunch of Afghanis working for Al-Qaeda who were about to go and fly planes into September 11th, it wouldn't have been defending its citizens to go and arrest them or to go and fight them. So I don't know where that argument's exactly meant to start. I'm not sure.
Do you sometimes wonder where people like Hijab make arguments and they're so logically flawed? Do you think they're saying them in good faith and they genuinely believe what they're saying, or is this really just they're trying to taunt Israel basically, and it's really just a tactic to undermine Israel's existence?
So I think a few things. Again, I don't want to comment on something where I don't know the person personally and I don't know enough about them to I would always try to assume good faith, right? I think what there is the following. When you hate somebody or you hate something, everything they do you see in the most evil light. The more deep the hatred, the more the propensity to see them that way. There's a lot of people who hate Israel, right? For many reasons. Some on the more Islamist side, it's an insult to Islam that there's a non-Islamic entity in the Middle East, right? The non-Islamic political entity in the Dar al-Islam. There's also the suffering Palestinians have been through for many, many decades. We can debate who's responsible for what, where. Israel's been through tremendous suffering. Palestinians have been through tremendous suffering and even more, right? A lot of trauma there. They can have a natural hatred. On the socialist left, there's a very deep hatred to Israel. Again, for many, many reasons. The hatred of Israel long precedes the state of Israel in the socialist left. But there's all sorts of reasons why people hate Israel. Some easier to relate to for us than others. Once you hate Israel, everything it will do will be evil. I think that's probably a part of a lot of these arguments. So the context you bring to bear with the conflict is going to have a huge impact. If you love Israel before, you'll see things one way. If you hate Israel before, you'll see them another way. If you're coming from a liberal secular perspective, you'll see one thing. If you're coming from certain narratives that fit an intersectionality world, everyone likes to interpret things their own way. I think that particular argument, at least the way we saw the context of it, doesn't work from any perspective. But I think I'm guessing what he's trying to say is, look, in this conflict as a whole, Israel is the main aggressor. And therefore, for the most part, you've got to look at it in the context of Palestinians defending themselves, something along those lines. The particular argument, I don't think was effective, but that it's not fair on him or fair, to just fully comment. And on that particular argument, I don't think there's any possible grounds for saying Israel's not defending its civilians in principle. And I want to say something else, which I think is really important, because I think a lot of people don't get what's going on in this war, right? I'm talking about good faith people who might be on neither side, but really, seeing a little bit of both. And people are like, okay, there was a horrific massacre of Israelis, 1,200 people killed. It was horrific. But look how many there've been on the other side. Like, you know, what's this about? Or is there too many civilian casualties? And these are real deep moral questions and problems. But one thing one needs to understand, Israel's not going to avenge 1,200 people. That's not what this war's about. Vengeance doesn't really get you anywhere. Israel's going to protect 9 million people. And I want to explain this. I think this is such an important point. It is absolutely a defensive war. It's a defensive war. Israel went 16 years avoiding fighting because of how much damage and how much death there could be in it. But ultimately, Hamas has shown, it's always shown its genocidal intent. That's not new. Hamas not alone. There's Hezbollah up in the north. Iran's been building groups all around the place. What they've demonstrated is a tremendous capabilities to cross Israel border. Once losing hundreds or even 1,000 of their own soldiers in the original attack, they were able to commit huge slaughter, and they're only going to get more powerful. And if they emerge from this intact, the way jihadi organizers, the way ISIS work, the minute they succeed, they get huge recruitment, huge money poured into them, huge amount of volunteers. Their real goal is to take over the West Bank after this, become more powerful in Gaza, take over the West Bank. And without the West Bank, Israel is only 9 miles thin at its narrowest. That's almost no military can defend something like that, right? Almost the entire Israeli population is pretty much within a few miles of the West Bank border. If Hamas could take that over and do the same thing, it wouldn't have been moving 10 miles into Israel past some farming villages and kibbutzim and small towns. It would have been in the heartlands of Tel Aviv, Herzliya, Netanya, Jerusalem. It could have been in the grounds where there are millions of Israelis. This war is how do we defend 9 million Israelis and 9 million Jewish Israelis? How do you defend them from being slaughtered in the next few years or decades? Because that's what Hamas wants to do. And the idea of trying to contain them and building barriers clearly failed. So the idea this is not a defensive war is ludicrous. You can argue, are there too many civilians or not? And this is something we can discuss. And part of the tragedies of these really, really difficult wars where humans are being used as shields and what's possible, what's not possible. You cannot argue this isn't a defensive war. Every Israeli, I would say well over 90% of the Israeli population is united behind this war. And that's the far right to the far left, because they understand that if Hamas is not destroyed now, it's a matter of time before millions and millions of Israelis are going to be in serious, serious danger, if not be killed.